All right, so I'm here with my uncle, Ricky Maipid. He is the current president of the KILROY chapter MVPA, which is short for the Kentucky, Indiana Liberated Relics of Yesteryear Military Vehicle Preservation Association. All right, so we good to go?
Yeah, go ahead with your questions.
All right, so first, can you tell us, have you witnessed or taken part in any historical event, and what was it?
Well, you're referring to a historical event, and we need to clarify that a little bit. Every second, which adds up to minutes and to hours and days, all become part of history. And it just depends on the individual or the society that's looking into those events. So yes, I can tell you that I've witnessed and participated in a historical event based on my perspective. And what comes to mind is an event that I participated in 2019.
Mm-hmm. All right. So if so, can you tell me how you happened to be a witness or participant in this historical event back in 2019 and what it was?
Well, in 2019, it was the 75th anniversary of D-Day. So that's June 6, 1944, was when the Allied forces invaded the European continent in order to liberate the countries that the Axis powers have taken over.
Mm-hmm.
So back in 2019, along with an organization, Honor Flight Bluegrass, they organized this event to commemorate the 75th anniversary of D-Day. And I considered that historical in some respect because of the fact that not well known to the people of the United States, Kentucky had the largest gathering of World War II veterans for that event in the continental United States.
Wow.
There were events in Europe, and there was a big event taking place there to commemorate the event. But here in the continental United States, Kentucky had 109 World War II veterans in one place.
Wow.
And so that itself, like I said, that's historical. And to be part of that is worth participating in. And I got invited to that, and partially part of the organizing committee is because, I own a World War II vehicle.
Yes.
And that itself, it's a historical piece of World War II history that I have. And that allowed me to get around individuals that have participated. It's like a conversation starter.
Yeah.
And so that was the event that I would consider that historical in that respect, that we had 109 veterans in one location, and that I was a participant in that particular event.
Wow. Very good. Before I move on, can you just quickly explain how you came across or happen to have your historical relic, your World War II Jeep? Can you just quickly?
Well, I've always been interested in the World War II Jeeps. From a young age, I always looked at possibly owning a World War II Jeep. But in that search, I also wanted one that has a history behind it. Mm-hmm. So, because, if one wants to put a Jeep together or buy a Jeep, they can easily do that using mixed parts. But I got lucky, waiting for almost 30 years. I found one with a story behind it, mm-hmm. history behind it. The Jeep that I own actually saw action in World War II. It was in the Pacific Theater of Operations in the island of Guam. So that Jeep took part in the liberation of Guam, which is part of the Mariana Group of Islands. And it was assigned to a Navy officer. And that Navy officer, after the war, when he was stationed back to the States, was able to purchase that Jeep and brought it home. And so, so like I said, my Jeep is not just any other Jeep. It actually saw action in World War II, and then brought back to the West Coast, where it stayed there for a good number of many years. And it actually came back to the West Coast in 1949. And then the Navy officer passed away in 2000, and then it was made available in the market in 2010. It required a lot of restoration, but it's all put together now. And another thing to add to the Jeep, again, it's part of the history of the Jeep, is that unbeknownst to me, when I purchased the Jeep, I did not even know where it came from as far as being assembled at. It's a Ford Jeep, and Ford had 6 different plants in the continental United States that were producing Jeeps in World War II. But like I said, my priority was to find a Jeep that had a history behind it. So it's like it has a story to tell. And when I finally got it back here in Louisville and doing some research on the numbers, the serial numbers on the Jeep, I discovered that it actually was produced here in Louisville in February of 1943. So there, it's like the stories behind the history and all that are branching out. Because now not only do I have a Jeep that was sort of born in Louisville, Kentucky, went to war, came back home in the West Coast. I finally brought it back to Louisville, where it was born.
Wow.
So, so that's the history of the Relic that I have, and that opened up doors because even here in Louisville, when it's well known about World War II Jeeps, there's a company called Willis Overland, and most people that know a little bit of World War II history and the Jeeps always refer to these vehicles as Willis. And so when people would say, "Oh, you got a Willis there," I said, "No, it's a Ford." And then they said, "No, Ford didn't make Jeeps." I said, "Well, that there was a light bulb moment there that even the locals here in Louisville were not aware." So I kind of made it my mission to promote the history of Ford Motor Company during World War II, and that they're one of the Ford Motor Company plants that produced or partaken in the arsenal of democracy. And as a final note to that production, 20% of the Jeeps in World War II were produced in Louisville, Kentucky by the Ford Motor Company.
Very good. Well, thanks for that. Can you now describe how you felt when you realized you were participating in what could be a historical event back in 2019?
Well, so I brought my Jeep there, and it was the only military vehicle at the event. And as the World War II veterans were coming up to this auditorium, it was parked outside, and right away, the World War II veterans relate to a World War II Jeep. And some of them haven't been on a World War II Jeep or on a Jeep, a military Jeep, since the end of World War II. So they were attracted to the Jeep, and they were having their pictures taken around it. Some even rode behind the wheel of the Jeep and had their pictures taken. So seeing all these World War II veterans gather around this relic, it's a feeling that's almost indescribable, because it's like they're being put together with a long lost friend from World War II.
Wow.
And when we got in the auditorium, and and they were being recognized, because the range of their ages were probably from about 90 years old to about 103. And to see these veterans, walking around and exchanging or sharing their stories with the families and friends gathered in that event, like I said, it's indescribable. What you feel, because there's the history that's around you. And the other thing is the venue of the gathering for this World War II veterans is at the Louisville Memorial Auditorium, which itself at the time in 2019 was celebrating its 90th anniversary. This was a auditorium that was built right after World War One, and um, to honor the locals, the Louisville locals that fought in World War One. So again, like I said, when you're talking about history and you're talking about a specific topic, you can't really avoid tying some other event uh, to to um, to really explain, what the background of the event. So.
Mhm. Very true. Wow. So, how important is it to you that historical events are to be remembered and commemorated in these ways?
Well, you've heard of the saying, um, if you don't look at your past, you have the tendency of repeating uh, mistakes of the past. Or another way of putting that out is learn from history so that um, you can improve moving forward things that uh, that will help mankind, or even in general. So it is important to me um, to remember the past uh, and to commemorate events, because like I said, uh, in today's world it is important to be looking back, and so that you'll have a better concept of how to move forward. So
For sure. So, let me ask, in today's culture of digital gadgets and social media, do you think individuals have time to look back at history in this age in society?
well, yes. But it will take individuals that will persist in talking about history. Social media is a big part of what I do in promoting history.
Yeah.
I have several Facebook pages that I manage, and they're all related to World War II history. It's all related to um, the local places here in my area, Louisville, Kentucky. So I believe, even though at this age that people are, or individuals are so um, focused on video games, or gossip, that the
Yes.
same media can be used to promote history. Like
Oh,
I
for
said,
sure.
uh, I have a great following on my postings, and I get a lot of messages saying that uh, that they've learned something from my postings. So yes, to answer your question, yes, I believe that even in this age, history can be taught and promoted, and just move on.
Sure. Oh, I love to hear it. Are physical reminders of an event, such as plaques, monuments, or publications, can you tell me how important they've been in promoting history for you, and just promoting history in general?
Yeah, plaques, monuments, and it's like my Jeep. That's a physical relic. So it's like I said earlier, it's a conversation starter.
Yes.
So and like I said, it's how I used to promote the history of World War II and the significance of Ford Motor Company in our area. Uh, Plaques, some of them, are thick with moss. If you go to places that like cemeteries, your national cemeteries, some of these plaques are, I've seen their best years. And if you stand there and somebody's just staring at it, you can start the conversation. Monuments, the same thing. A lot of times we go past monuments, but we don't take the time to stop. But again, if you're out there and you want to promote history, the best way is, you may not even have to know details about the particular monument, but if somebody's there, then you all can get started. And and probably you can Google uh, the significance of that monument. So yes, I think it's important because the lack of reminders of the past is really going to be bad for keeping uh, or teaching about history if there's no reminders.
Yes. Wow. Well, thank you for that, for keeping history alive. I love to hear it. So on a personal level, what do you get out of talking about the events that you promote and mentioned that you consider as historical? Like what would you say have been your greatest takeaways?
Well, it's a personal satisfaction that it's not something that you can buy. Uh, what really gives me satisfaction is when I see young people showing interest in history. I've been to several events that to give an example, I was in an event at the local airfield that's been around since the early 1900s, and it participated in the training of glider pilots that eventually was part of the D-Day invasion. And so that airfield, which also again now last year was supposed to have celebrated its 100th anniversary, for the last 5 so years they've been having an annual event. In one of those events, I had a wound up record player, and I was approached by a little girl while I was winding it up, and I had a vinyl record on it, and this little girl says, "Sir, are you charging that unit?" And I kind of had to pause, and sure, yeah, that's even though it's a manual wind up thing, yeah, it's a form of charging. So that really, encourages me to display my collection, and and so that's one of the things. And one time, I stopped by a local restaurant, and so I was parking the Jeep, and beside me was a family that just pulled in a minivan, and I just happened to glance. There was this kid that was jumping up and down inside the van, and he couldn't wait to get out. And then when the mom opened the door, the kid just yelled, "Mom, Sarge is alive!" So the character from the movie Cars. And so I asked the mother, "Well, do you, if your son wants to get into the Jeep behind the wheel?" And unfortunately, the mother said, "No, it's late into the evening. If you do that, he won't be able to sleep. He's going to ask us to put the DVD back on so he can watch it." So those are the things that that encourage me, especially like I said, it's the youth, it's your generation that will carry this over. Because if the younger generation is not going to pick up, where we're going to be leaving off, and then all this will be gone. Nobody's going to talk about it. And recently, as of this last Saturday or Friday, my group participated in the 76th anniversary of VE Day, Victory Europe Day. And so again, I mentioned the fact on the guy that was interviewing me from a local TV station that, we are simply custodians of these vehicles. Hopefully, a younger generation will pick it up and carry out talking about the history of these vehicles, because these vehicles represented freedom, and the soldiers that have driven these vehicles are long gone, and but they're reminders of the past. And so like I said, history is very important. What we're doing here right now is historical.
Yes,
So,
we're keeping the story alive, and
yeah.
it's a great honor to be a part of that. Next, do you have any advice for the youth of today in recognizing the significance of witnessing what could possibly be something historic.
Well, most of the youth today are so focused on their electronic devices. You all have to exercise situational awareness because history is happening all around you. So it would help if you would take time to pause and look around you and see what's going on around you. And like I said, histories will only be significant depending on the individual. So if the things that are happening around you are ignored, then it just the story will never, good or bad, will never be acknowledged by the masses. So you can promote anything because if you don't witness it, you don't necessarily have to be participant. Just paying attention to what's going around you is what's gonna hopefully get a young person to look back and talk about what they've experienced or somebody's experience for them to take note. There's two young guys. Actually, it's a boy and a girl that they started their interest in World War II history, and they actually are now going around different campuses talking about history. And one of the things they've done is they're talking to World War II veterans, Korean War veterans, Vietnam veterans, and they're recording their stories and all that. And that's really very refreshing for somebody at their age to recognize the significance of recording the people that actually lived the history.
Wow. Earlier, you kind of touched on your participation in the VE Day anniversary. So I just have to ask, were there any other events that you would consider historical that followed, even since 2019, since your...
Yes. In most of these events that that I participate in, they have individuals that lived history. And one that really stands out is I met one of two Medal of Honor recipients in the Battle of Iwo Jima. At the time in 2019, there were only two of them that are still around, and sadly, one of them passed away. But one is still around. He's the Medal of Honor recipient for Iwo Jima, the Battle of Iwo Jima. Herschel. His name is he's got a nickname Woody, but Herschel Woody Williams last year celebrated, I think, his 97th birthday, and I was also part of the celebration. And so just to be around these people, and they get to talk about the experience and all that. And Woody is very it's very humble guy, even though he has the Medal of Honor and all that, and he also tells people that it doesn't belong to him. That honor, that Medal of Honor that he's wearing around his neck belongs to the people, not just to him. So
wow.
So yes, in this event, it's just to be around these individuals that have lived and survived the battles of World War II, Korea and Vietnam, and most recent conflicts that the United States has been involved with. It's hard to explain really the feeling when you're surrounded by these individuals. There was also an event that I was able to ride in a T-47, one of the troop carriers that was heavily used in World War II. And it just so happened that two of the veterans that were on board, they were brothers. At the time, I think one was like 100 years old, one was like in his early 90s. And both of them served in the Pacific Theater of Operations. And then and both of them were in the Philippine Islands for the liberation of the Philippines. So as you know, our family is originally from the Philippines. So to talk to individuals and to be brothers, to meet two brothers that served in the same area during World War II is, again, it's indescribable what you feel, because you're talking to them, and they're telling you what they did. So.
Wow. Well, I just have one last question for you. And it's actually, is there any, before we conclude, is there anything else that you just want to share? Just anything.
Well, as a conclusion, I'll just say, in line with the slogan of our national organization, which is the Military Vehicle Preservation Association, keep history in motion. I've written several articles that's been published. At the end of each of my articles, I always try to mention keeping history in motion. So, because again, it doesn't have to really relate to a vehicle, but you need to keep it going. Otherwise, if it stays in one place, then it's not doing any good.
Very true. Well, Uncle Ricky, I just want to say thank you for keeping, this history alive. It's and allowing us to bring it here to Wichita for even just this project. And it's a great honor for me to be a part of it. And I'm just really grateful for it. So, yeah.
Well, I love talking about history and about the World War II Jeep. So anytime you you need for me to talk about, because I can't quit talking about World War II Jeep. So.
Oh yeah, I love to hear it whenever you're in town. It's just brings a lot of, it's very gratifying and rewarding. So thank you again. It's an honor to be a part of this and to have you work with us too. So
anytime.
And I think that's all we have for today. Thank you again, and that's it. All right, well, I'll end this recording and we're good. 3, 2, 1.